Welcome to Forward Momentum, a podcast about independent watchmaking, a niche within the watchmaking world where some of the most talented, creative, and innovative watchmakers are redefining what a watch can be. Join me as we uncover the stories of craft, trace the history of independent watchmaking, and explore the evolving watch market. You'll hear interviews with watchmakers, journalists, and collectors as we dive into this fascinating world and the watch collecting lifestyle. Welcome back to Forward Momentum. What's happening, watch fans? Welcome back to Forward Momentum. It's Todd from Idea 33, joined again by CQ, the watch guy, breaking down Monaco Legends and New York. CQ, what's going on, man?
Doing well. How you doing, Todd?
I'm great, man. I'm sweating, so you know we're live
Yes.
here on this podcast, and looking forward to this, man. Had some stuff going on in life and couldn't get my auction preview out, so apologies to everyone on that. But there's a lot to cover here, and I think that was end of auction season for the spring. Now we got a long rest and reset for the watch industry before Geneva Watch Days, which is really the next big thing. But there have been a few launches, and I anticipate that we'll have one or two more launches, just people, dropping new stuff over the summer. But don't expect too much before Geneva Watch Days.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we'll see a few splashes. Everybody's we've broken out of the old school, let's just wait for the fairs. Brands like, the ones we're going to talk about today have really explored striking while the iron's hot or striking while it's cold, let's say, but nobody else is taking that air. You try to be the NFL and give people something to talk about every single month. And I think brands are figuring out that's the best way is don't wait until the fairs, because it can be such a long time until the piece actually delivers as well, right? Why don't you sprinkle out some nice things? So let's see what happens. But
yeah, I think it's that in combination with like the fairs are just such a media frenzy. And everybody wants to be out first before basically Patek and Rolex get their announcements out, because they're going to drown everybody out. So, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw people dropping stuff a few days before Geneva Watch Days. So for the US market, like Labor Day weekend, because I think Geneva Watch Days is September 4th to 7th this year, I want to say. And so I wouldn't be surprised if people are getting stuff out like end of August, beginning of September, just to grab those headlines, get that attention before everything goes down.
Yeah, I think so. I'm excited, man. I think it's a weird year because of the tariffs and everything. Prices have just exploded. So it makes me wary to suggest to, clients and friends what to jump in on. But in terms of what's being delivered, whether you love independents or mainstream brands, there's interesting things being dropped left and right. So a lot of good things for you to chomp on. Whether you buy, that's a real question.
Man. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's becoming an increasingly important question given pricing and where the market is at. Do you want to stomach the higher prices for new indies who are coming onto the scene, or do you want to stomach higher prices at auction? It's all a question of what you're willing to put your money towards. It's we're seeing a sort of continuous rise with Journe. I think indies, like we talked about for Hong Kong, it's so piece dependent that it's hard to forecast. But really, brands are coming out with strong pieces now, and in accordance with that, they're coming out with strong pricing too. And I think pricing has gotten to a point of craziness in terms of where we're starting retail pricing at for some of these watches.
It's insane. Blancpain just released a 38 millimeter 50 fathoms on a bracelet, and it's priced just a little under $20,000. With tax, is going to be in the 20s, and that's supposed to be a watch that competes directly with a Submariner or something. So it's I think the baseline for what prices are have really shifted, and when you go to the independent world, it's really tough, right? Have you ever heard of a watchmaker called Love Hunter? Love Hunter watches. No. So it's I'm probably a little bit early talking about it, but he's a American watchmaker that I just stumbled upon, and I had conversations with him. He's working on getting his first piece out, and he's doing a Dufour-esque situation where he's building everything from scratch in the US. He found all the lathe machines and just has a really great workshop there. And we kind of got into the pricing question. And it's very interesting because a week prior, I had a conversation with some people who collect heavy in the independent world, and they had some conversations with some independent heads, let's say there. And they said the issue that they have is if they were to price accurately, where they feel they can make some money and they can still make the product and everything can progress, it would be too low. And they feel that others might perhaps nudge them a little bit, like, why are you messing up the game? And in the same sense, Mr. Hunter has a conversation with him, and he's trying to figure out where to price his stuff. And he's like a new watchmaker. You never heard of him. A lot of people hearing this, he doesn't even have a website. That's how new he is, right? And he was trying to
Yeah.
figure out, where do I price my product? And somebody had to tell him, hey, you got to bump it up, because look at the landscape and look at what you're doing and look at demand hours going into it. And it's just,
Yeah.
I think we need to figure out what's a base level out there. What should a steel automatic watch cost from a luxury house, from a handmade house? What should a ceramic watch cost? Is Hublot not the best ceramic? If Hublot is the best ceramic, why does an AP ceramic have such a big premium compared to their steel pieces? If we can all kind of
Yeah.
say Hublot is the best at the colored ceramic, especially, right? So there's a lot of fog and mystery there when it comes to, like, exactly what are my dollars going to? Am I buying, craftsmanship? Am I buying hype? Am I buying your marketing budget? And I think a lot of people are trying to figure that out.
Yeah. And I think your point is well made about we should really have a standard expectation for like what a stainless steel sport watch is going to be on a stainless steel bracelet. The market is so varied right now across the board from like, let's call it, 9,000 to like 50,000. And it, some of it doesn't compute for me. But I think, standard computation for hours going into the work, hours going into the decoration, so, movement, finishing, assembly, components, let's agree that a standard bracelet is, like 68 grams of gold. Okay, so that's a standard price for the raw material. You add the markup in there. Like you can kind of work your way, I think, into the math for a lot of these prices. But a lot of them still, to me, feel devoid of reality. Like for a 38 millimeter Blancpain, like I just don't see it for 20K. I've always thought the 50 Fathoms is a great watch. I've owned three of them. But at, 15K, somewhere between like 14, 15K at retail. And it says Blancpain in huge letters down the side, on the case band. So like you got to take that out of the case band because I don't want to be like a giant advertising platform for you. But I think, when you compete with the Submariner or Tudor, like if you're competing with the Tudor FXD, the Tudor Pelagos, the Pelagos is an incredible watch. And at 4,500 retail, I'd take that watch every day over the 50 Fathoms. And that's, it's that simple. It's an amazing movement. It's a watch that's going to run forever. And it looks the business all the time.
I agree. It's very hard, and it's like an easy win. 38 millimeter, 58 fathoms. So many people have been asking for a watch of that size. So you have a great base of people who are willing to give you the shot. Off just the size, they're willing to give you the shot. But then with the pricing, it's hard for me to not tell people you need a discount. Now I'm back to that. I'm back to being in the islands again.
Yeah.
And hey, make sure you're getting 15 to 20% off. Make sure you're getting goodies. Because to tell me that you're going to pay 20 something thousand, it's just because we gotta think about the secondary market, man. We gotta think about, a lot of people have realized that they love watches and it's a slippery slope, right? When it comes
Yeah.
financial side. So a lot of people are now thinking smartly, what am I going to get back out of this watch when my tastes just change? I was talking to a collector today and it's like, hey, I don't know. I just don't wear it anymore. My taste just changed. And that's life. We're human. Seasons change, your tastes change. So you want to know, hey, I can get at least, I don't know, 60-ish, 70-ish% back out, hopefully in a beautiful world. But something like a Blancpain 50 Fathoms is like, Nobody's chasing that watch. Many people will just buy that same watch secondary market in a bigger size. Who cares, for a much cheaper price? So it's very hard for,
Yeah,
beyond the first wave of people who just really don't care what they're spending on. I don't think there's that big of a Blancpain fan base that will support that product to justify that price at all.
totally, man. Yeah, I would agree. And I just, I love the 50 Fathoms. I love the series. I love the history. I think there were a couple up for auction recently. It's a super cool watch, but I just can't abide the advertising in the case band. Just fill that in, like take it away, or subtract, like the 3 grams of engraving on the side from the price of my watch, please.
And that's a fair trade. That's a
Um,
fair trade off.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. But so we're talking news here. Might as well jump in. Like you were talking ceramic watches. I was thinking about sapphire watches too. Did you see the Grubels that
Oh
they
man.
launched? They're like, I think it was 3 pieces, different sapphire colors in 5-piece limited editions.
Oh, so I didn't see the 3 pieces, but I saw the blue sapphire double Balenciaga,
Yeah,
and my heart
yeah,
just stopped for a second. And I was like, I love watches, but I need to find another industry that I can just amass wealth very quickly. Maybe I start playing the lotto. I honestly did think maybe I played the
yeah,
Powerball, because like
yeah,
that is the grail of grails for me. I love the double Balenciaga, but to see it in blue sapphire, like
yeah,
I don't know if I'd wear another watch if that was in my collection. That just looks amazing, and being that it's Grubel, you just know what goes into it. So I didn't even check
yeah.
the price because I know it's gonna be insane, but worth it. Whatever it is,
Yeah,
it's
I
worth
don't
it.
know what it is, but it's a lot. I think they did a green too, if I'm not
Oh
mistaken. Like I
wow.
saw a green out there too that Michelle posted. And I messaged Michelle as soon as I saw the first one, and I was just like, dude, this is amazing. This is an incredible launch. Like, congratulations. And the fact that they just dropped it on like a Tuesday, no
Nope.
fanfare, nothing. Like, Michelle Neidegaard just posted it to his Instagram account and to Grubel Forcey's Instagram account, and like,
I, I
that was it.
I thought it was like
Or like
a piece
Grubel
unique.
posted
I
it and he
saw
reposted it.
Steve Rosowski posted. I was like, oh, what's this? And I went to the Grupo page and I was like, oh, wow, But you're right, very quiet release, and I like what they're doing right now. It seems like they're kind of being under the radar. Just releases some good stuff. I have a feeling they're taking some good energy from the Zuck wave. They got some like that good
Yeah,
inertia going, and I think there is a way to make Grubel the brand that we all want it to be. And it's hard
yeah,
because, well, I used to think it was hard because of the price point. But as you look at other brands now, they're just inching up to Grubel's price point.
yeah,
So if Grubel can just sustain and keep the quality, right? Look at the auctions, right? One thing I wanted to point out, Grubel's performed very well in these auctions. Everything hit pretty much their low estimate, right in between. One piece I think went above the high estimate. I believe it was a piece unique or a very rare piece, but we didn't see that a year ago, 2 years ago. Grubel was always one of the
yeah,
lower end brands. So there is an appreciation there. I think there is consumers who really, if RM's asking you 135 for the base level, the square piece that nobody wants, it makes it, and then you're
yeah,
paying close to 200 for RM67 titanium to pay 100 gram. If we're already in the ballpark, and
yeah,
and I take a tour, I see what's going on, I really understand what watchmaking is. I see that blue sapphire piece. There's no Richard Mille that I could envision that would make me buy that over that Grubel. That Grubel's amazing.
yeah. That has the equivalency, that has the technical background from the brand, the incredible watchmaking. I just don't see it. But man, I was blown away when I saw that, and like a no fanfare launch. Like, hats off to you, Grubel. Like, amazing job, just doing a very subtle, very lovely launch. And I think in an industry where people are often screaming for attention, I really appreciated that very quiet launch that Grubel did. So, Michelle, Robert, Stephen, great job, guys. Just
Kudos.
hats off to everyone on the Grubel team. Um, let's see here. Moving a little further north in Switzerland, Moser.
Yes.
Moser just launched a couple pieces in the spiced aqua color line for their Pioneer series, and I'm not sure if they've just like they found a bunch of Dolphins fans
Yeah, right.
or everybody loves the Miami Grand Prix. Like I'm not entirely sure where this line is going.
It
Like
might be
I
that.
appreciate the color hits, but I'm wondering if this was like, did they make a team watch for the Dolphins? Like maybe they figured out some licensing deal with Hard Rock Stadium, and they're going to have a boutique in the Hard Rock Stadium. But this to me, it feels a little like old Moser, circa 2011, 2012, like early 2010s time frame, where they were just pumping out different colorways. 50 pieces here, 25 pieces there. And I'm a little worried for them. I love Edouard. I love Bertrand and Claudio. I love all those guys. Their team is amazing.
Very good.
I'm a little worried that they're getting too many SKUs and too many colorways with this one.
Man, we need that on a t-shirt. Too many SKUs, too many colorways, and a lot of brands I think fall into this.
That's literally like every group brand. We should just print those shirts and send them to
Yes,
them.
too many SKUs. You really, there's a collector who really, when the independence and everything really started to take off, he's one of my good friend and best clients and collectors, right? And one thing he would always talk about Jorn, FP Jorn, and why it does so well is how curated the collections are, right? And then
Yeah.
when it was defined how you collected and what's brass and all these things, and there's kind of a roadmap to collecting that brand. So it's kind of easy if you have the capital, you kind of know, okay, I get this, I get that, and I move on. The issue with Moser and why I worry, and like you, I adore Edouard, Bertrand, Claudio. I've known all of them for so many years, and when I say I've met so many people within this industry from top to bottom, and really very rare. It's a slogan, but the people there are very rare in terms of not being afraid of shaking up the industry. We all forget about the Swiss Icons watch, not being afraid of trying different things. That's how the Streamliner was born. And that the success from that is amazing, and I applaud them for that. But we're getting into too much SKUs, too many SKUs. What I love about Moser, the colorful dials, all these things. But now I think on the heels of the Pop collection, which is a beautiful collection of stone pieces and a lot of different colorways, to go into the Spice Aqua, especially to release it, I think my issue is the tourbillon situation. When you do the Pioneer, that's going to be really well priced. I think it's like 15,000 Swiss francs or something like that. So that's good. But then you start to get into the normal tourbillon, and then you also have the spherical tourbillon. So you're talking 50,000 and then close to 80,000 US for the spherical tourbillon. It just makes it very hard, a hard sell in my opinion, and you put on top of that the many Streamliner editions. We just had the smartwatch collab, the smartwatch and skeletonized dial Alpine edition. There's just a lot of SKUs out there in all the models for them, and I think now wouldn't be a bad time to just relax, let things cook for a little bit. I think people love Moser. The one thing, as somebody who, I work in a secondary market, and that's something I have to monitor day to day, you're seeing a little bit of a softness there in the market. And just because there's too much variety, there's too much things to get. They're all great. And when you have that situation, you end up with Lauren Ferrier, where people chase certain great variations that they've seen or they saw that they love, and they're not really interested in getting the new things because you could just get the other good things that you fell in love with last year on the secondary market at a discount. So I worry that we ran into too much SKUs. I think we need to pull off a little bit, because they're great watches, and I love the colorways, but it just seems that every couple months it's a big batch of watches being released there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think the too many SKUs, too many colorways goes to every group brand that we can think of. Like off the top of my head, I think about Omega, I think about Breguet. Like, make me CEO of Breguet for a day, and I will slash SKUs left, right, and center and try and bring that brand back to its historical prominence.
But they won't let they won't let you, Todd. I know. Do you know about Mr. Wood, who's trying to get on the board of Swatch? You know about that whole situation?
No, I don't. So, is he the activist investor
yes.
who's trying to get on board? Yeah, okay, yeah.
So he's an activist investor from the US who tried and failed to get on the board of the Swatch Group. And I'll send you over the link. But on his fund is not the hugest fund. I believe it's $200-300 million, but most of the fund is in the Swatch Group. So they're not the
Yeah.
biggest shareholders by any means, but he's putting his money where his mouth is. And he has actually an interesting strategy and plan and proposal for Swatch Group to consider on how to shake things up. He thinks that the Hayek family does really good management of lower end brands like Tissot and Swatch and things like that. But where they struggle is in higher end brands like Breguet. And he's a big Breguet collector. And he just suggested, hey, you need to slim down the SKUs. You need to really lean into the fact that it's a luxury. I'll send it to you. I don't want to waste a podcast on that.
Yeah.
But they struck him down, and one of the big points is that he's not a Swiss national. He's not somebody from the inside. And I thought that was so interesting because here's somebody who really put his money where his mouth is. Small fund. He doesn't need to put it in Swatch Group. I think that's a risky bet to put most of your fund in Swatch Group. Has a very valid plan laid out on how he could help. Just wanted to get on the board to, and no, he's not from Switzerland. He's not from the inside. And they gave some, in my opinion, not good reasons to not invite somebody on to maybe, because look at Breguet, man. Again, another great brand who made some great releases this year. But when you look at the price points, it's just 50,000 for the subscription. It's just too much right now. It's too much.
Yeah. It's not matched to the rest of their performance across the portfolio. While we're talking about this in Swatch Group, and we were talking Blancpain earlier, the Swatch Blancpain, whatever they're calling that watch, it's the 50 fathoms version of the Moon Swatch. I'm sorry, I don't know its name, but they just released an olive green one. Dude, I'm taking that over the 38 millimeter 50 fathoms every day.
And that's the issue. Because why not?
That's the issue. Yeah, and that's the issue right there.
It looks good. You can buy 5 of them.
$500, something like that, versus 22. Let's call it with tax. Yeah. I'm buying the olive green. I also just love the colorway.
It's really nice. It's a sharp looking watch. That was the issue with the Blancpain Swatch. Is everybody said the same thing? Is like, well, people will probably just buy. It's not gonna happen with the Moon Swatch. People love Speedies, but with 50 fathoms, there'll be people like you and I as well who like. There are a few of those that I'll buy, and I don't think I'd buy a Blancpain, but definitely not retail. Definitely not.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, we're talking about people investing actively in watch brands. I was just at the launch for Urban Jurgensen.
Nice.
And the Rosenfield family has invested heavily in that brand and had an amazing launch.
Looked like a party.
They brought Urban Jurgensen back with 3 SKUs. So I think they started appropriately, pulling a lot of the history. They've got the UJ1, which is the Derek Pratt oval pocket watch. They miniaturized that movement and put it in a platinum case and a rose gold case. They're doing 75 of those. It's 25 across platinum with silver dial, rose gold, silver dial, and platinum. There's another dial configuration that I can't remember, but it's 75 total. Then they've got the UJ2, which is, I believe that's the time only model. So time only with a power reserve on the dial. And then they've got the UJ3, which is the perpetual. And I got to say, I got a lot of questions from people about the lug shape of those watches.
Yes.
Like they look a little angular in the photos and on the flat. And I will tell you that they actually disappear into the case when you put them on your wrist.
Really?
They actually make the watch super comfortable to wear because the way they're angled and the way they sit, they're actually brushed and the case band is brushed. So top and bottom of case band are polished, sides are brushed. So when you actually put the watch on your wrist and look at it, the lugs just kind of get sucked up into the case band and you don't even notice them. So I've got an article coming on this where I've got photos of it on my wrist and like they just disappear. I didn't even notice them once the watches were on. But I think the watches are amazing. The quality is amazing. Kari's overseen this team of watchmakers that have made these watches. I got to spend a lot of time with the Tourbillon team, which is what I've dubbed them, who spent, a couple of years working on the Tourbillon, and they've, they made one working prototype and then went to production with it.
Oh wow.
But the amount of time it took them to get to that one prototype, I think they said it was 2 years. It was an insane amount of time for them to get there.
It's a big lift
And
too.
actually,
It's a crazy to
and
translate that watch into a wristwatch.
the crazier part is I asked like, how involved was Kari in this? And they were like, yeah, we'd ask Kari questions, and he'd be like, well, yeah, find me a solution and come back to me, and like, tell me what you've tried. And so he let them really figure it out, which is kind of cool. And I really appreciate that from him, where instead of just like jumping in and solving it, he was like, hey, like this is your watch to work on, figure it out.
As it should
And
be,
I like,
that's how you
yeah,
bring the
totally.
craft forward. I love that.
That's how you, I mean, like, and those guys were young, they were young watchmakers. And I think that's incredible that they get the opportunity to work on, the Swiss watch industry for so many years. Like, you'd have to put in your 20 years before you could work on a perpetual, on a tourbillon.
Yep.
And now, like, this is why so many guys went independent, because they wanted to work on complicated watches and they weren't given the opportunity. And now it feels like there's a lot more opportunity if you really want to be a watchmaker. If you want to be an assembler and just put stuff together, there's opportunities out there for that. But I think to be a real watchmaker, to really test your skills and craft, and really, put on your thinking hat every day, show up to work and figure out how to make something work. I think there's some opportunities out there now.
For sure.
And so,
If you can
like,
really get your vision out there to just one person, one believer, it work. We've seen it time and time again. One person with a little bit of financial whatever, or even not even that, just one person in the right marketing place. People will support independence and support true watchmaking right now, for sure.
absolutely, man. And last point on Urban Jurgensen, like, great launch. Like, they've put a ton of time, thought, effort, energy, and love into this brand. Their price points, the time only, I think, is 120
Yeah.
US, 100 Swiss, something like that. The perpetual is somewhere in the 220 230 range. And then the Derek Pratt ovalized pocket watch, miniature tourbillon, UJ1 tourbillon wristwatch is 400,000. And it hurts my soul to say that one, because it's a beautiful watch. I understand where they're coming from, but I'm not convinced on pricing yet.
I I hate to be the harper of like the prices, but so I before I made like a real like decision on how I felt. I talked to some collectors. I talked to bam bam bam. How do we feel? Some people who were like this would be targeted at, and I feel like the one thing is for sure that this launch has sealed in the Kari Vutulainen market because people
Yeah,
loved the teardrop lugs. So it's just kind of like, hey, you love the teardrop lugs, you get the Kari pieces, and a lot of people love these watches, love what they represent, love the watchmaking that went into them, but it just feel like the prices are they just coming in hot with those prices. I understand that it probably is what it
yeah,
is, and I understand they're putting a lot of money and effort into the watches themselves and also the experience. That looked like a great launch party. I saw so many pictures and videos. They're doing a really good job there. But I think, I just wonder who these are targeted at, right? This is a fresh, we have to think
yeah,
about this as a fresh brand. It's a fresh brand. Yes, Kari Vutulainen is involved and he's director of it, but it's a fresh independent brand. So in my opinion, they should have had something that started under 100,000. That would have
yeah.
been really, to me, a very, very good price point to jump in at. But these will sell, and I'm
Oh
sure when
yeah,
the first ones of these hit the auction, they will do good as well. The question is, if you start here, in 5 years, there's going to be a price increase. Where are we then? Are we at 140,
yeah.
150 for entry level? That's my
Base,
issue.
yeah,
If you're starting at 120,
yeah,
that you're gonna have a price increase in the next 5 years. So that in 10 years,
yeah,
we're like it's RM issue, So
yeah,
I love the watches. I think they're great. I want to see your photos to see them on the wrist, but I just think a little premium on the pricing, and that's the
yeah,
feedback I'm getting from a
for
lot of
sure.
collectors as well.
For sure. And they've talked about they want to do some chronos, some split chronos going forward here. I wonder where do those fall in the lineup?
It's going to be too much.
And do they split the difference then? Do you go to like a 180 and maybe a 300? You kind of split the difference, like 180 for the chrono, 300 for the split, and you just kind of split the market a little bit. I'm very curious about the strategy and about how this is received. And like, I mean, let's put a pin in it and let's come back to it come Watches and Wonders 2026. Because I can guarantee you they're going to be at Watches and Wonders 2026.
And probably
I don't
blow
know if
us
they're going to be
away,
at Geneva Watch Days, but like let's see what they've gotten, where they're doing in 6 months' time, in a year's time. But I think you're right. I think the auction results will probably be strong off the bat here. If that if they come to auction.
I have a feeling one will pop up. One or two.
Yeah, one or two.
I mean, you have to, right? I would
Well,
if I was in,
yeah, totally. Well, speaking of auctions, should we? We're 30 minutes in. Should we actually jump into the intent?
It's too much stuff. Too much stuff to cover.
Let's hit up. Let's do Monaco Legends first, since they were first off the bat with our on the 5th of June. What I appreciate about Monaco Legend is that I think they do what I see as sort of the role of the auction house is they pull in sort of the rare, obscure, vintage pieces with less modern hype pieces, and they bring you sort of this really curated selection of watches from, everything from vintage Breguets, Gerald Genta, some really unique stuff in there that I think offers, a lot of old Franck Mueller, Patek, just cool vintage watches that I think for me have traditionally been the place of the auction house, and maybe Monaco Legend is bringing us back to that.
I would agree there. The curation there, for whatever reason I decided to live stream all these auctions from New York, and Phillips was really well curated, but definitely on the higher end side. You got your indies and stuff. Christie's was really good. Sotheby's was a little bit more modern stuff, especially their online auction is very much like we were saying before, just secondary market things. But Monaco Legend, a really good mixed bag of interesting things that if you're in the mood to bid on something would catch your interest. And I do think that's a place of auctions.
Yeah.
For that's where these unique kind of oddball watches from all brands, from blue chip brands and non-blue chip brands, should go, and they can get a good spot in the light, right, to get a good result.
Yeah, totally.
So I think they're doing a good job, and they found a nice space, a nice niche to live in, and they seem to be coming strong. And I think they're going to be big players for a long time.
Yeah, and their pricing wasn't too crazy. Like you could pick up some there were two Breguet 3350s in here, a yellow gold and a platinum or a white gold, and they didn't go for crazy money. So if you were hunting something in that vintage range, I think there's a lot of value to be had here. So I would recommend, everybody should be paying attention to Monaco Legend Group. They've got another auction coming up, I think this summer. So it's just worth paying attention because I think they've got some great stuff, and I don't think the bidding was maybe as crazy as it is at Phillips, Sotheby's, Christie's. Your really mainstream auction houses, but there's tremendous. I think there was tremendous value to be had here.
Yeah, I'm looking through again now, and just like you said, some really good vintage Breguets, a lot of good Franck Muellers as well, and a lot of special day dates.
I was actually the Franck Mueller collection here actually felt really special. It felt like Franck Mueller when Franck Mueller was Franck Mueller.
Yes,
I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does, and I could see I could see why he had his time, because the watches are so unique, and the colors and the shapes, and really cool complications as well. So I could see how every side of the fence loved and appreciated their watches.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think just a cool auction, something I'm definitely going to start keeping more of an eye on, because I think they have a great, I think they have a good eye for curating interesting auctions. And just want to keep an eye on what they've got. And I think if there's anything in the vintage world that I'm looking for, this is probably where I'm going to start looking, because I think there's value to be had.
I agree. Like I'm looking through the
I'm not.
prices. A lot of stuff went, a little premium, but a lot of stuff went for decent prices. Um,
Yeah,
and yeah, no, and all like very well curated, all special, unique.
yeah,
If you did bid, even if you overbid, I think you'd end up with something nice, which I think that's the point of an
yeah,
auction. Like, oh my gosh, I got so excited. The champagne was flowing, but I did come home with something unique, not just a
yeah.
Submariner.
Like you get carried away, like we talk about this all the time. Like there is the auction premium. So like you can't necessarily quote auction prices as market prices because people get carried away. People get competitive or people are having a good day and just like really want that watch. Or, it's a watch that one collector or two collectors in the room really want, but maybe the rest of the market doesn't have the same sentiment, but somebody really wants that watch and they get carried away on bidding and, now you got a new kind of price floor. But I don't always think that price floor is reality, is what the market will bear.
No, I mean the test is Jordan now because some very
Yeah,
strong results happened and
yeah.
they're
Let's
repeated.
talk Phillips. Let's talk Phillips because there was a lot
Yeah,
of Jorn at Phillips, and off the bat, like T30 hammering at 700,000 all in 889.
my mouth
You
was
gotta be kidding me!
open
I
half
remember
that.
I remember when that watch was selling, it's 99 piece limited edition. I remember on the secondary market when that watch was like 100
Yep.
or like 115. And that was a big ask at the time because the retail was 99K for this
I
watch.
remember
And like,
a collector 95 hesitating. You know what I mean? Like, oh,
yeah,
I don't know. And I was like, hey, it
yeah,
was high, but yeah, they were going up. They've been going up, but it kind of fell back down into the 300s, I feel. But to see one hammer
yeah,
for 700 all in the eights almost is like, oof, insane.
strong,
Very, very, very strong.
strong,
So the T10 now would
very
be
strong.
what? How much is a T10 if that were to go to the market? Is that a 4 million, $5 million watch or something now?
It's at least 1,000,008,
Yeah,
I think.
for sure.
But like what do I know? The market is like I thought for sure there would be crazier results across some pieces, but a T10 now, like for those who know the T10, I feel like you're reaching a couple million
Oh yeah.
pretty easily
I
at auction
I,
when they come
I
up.
wouldn't be surprised if a
But I
dealer.
also
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I also wonder if that's a more specific collector too. Like the T30, because of the dial, it feels like a classic dress watch that's easy to wear. I don't know. I think it's collector dependent.
It's very collector dependent because the T30 is, if you know type of Jorn, based off of his first
Yeah,
tourbillon, it doesn't look like any other Jorns out there. It's gold and silver. It's a very, very unique watch. So it's definitely somebody who's putting together a full Jordan collection and they're hunting important watches. I think that's what's happening right
yeah,
now. I think a lot of people are hunting important Jordan pieces. You don't see them pop up on Chrono 24 and things like that very often. There's a lot of private sales happening with them. So I think that's what's happening. When something publicly appears and maybe you're locked into the auction ecosystem for whatever reason, you're going to go hard for a special Jordan. Even the Elegante
yeah,
48 Title Light Boutique Edition, all in 88.9, and I know dealers are paying in the 80s for them now. Insane.
yeah. And I like with the just like on the T10, I wonder if that goes to like a collector who has a collection of black label watches because it's got the black subdials on it. Like, is that going to the collector who has platinum, black label, or rose gold, black label, everything?
Yeah, so it's going to be an all black label person who's putting together a full black label collection. I could see that. It could also be people who just understand how important and rare that watch is, and I think
Yeah,
there'd be the collector and the financial investor collector would be on a T10, and that
yeah,
would cause it to go for very strong numbers because it's something where most people
yeah,
who have those watches will never sell them. So
yeah,
it doesn't matter what the number becomes. So if one decided, and one has been sold, one or two have been sold on auction before. So one were to pop back up, I think a lot of markets would go crazy for that watch for sure.
yeah. And I think like looking at this T30, like if I owned a T30, like I've put a number of them on my wrist. If I owned one, I'd probably be wearing it every day. Like it's a killer watch. It's great. We've talked about this before. I love the hidden tourbillon. I love the just like it's a secret between you and the watch. Nobody else needs to know about it. And I think that makes that watch even more special. And then, the case number, the serial number is engraved in the middle of the case back. They've got a
Yep.
little mural polish spot in the back of the case back where it's engraved. And it's just it's those subtle touches that make it such a lovely object. Um,
It, I,
and
I agree. A lovely, just a piece of art. Nobody knows. It's $1 million watch. You could wear on the subway. You could walk down the street. Nobody, nobody knows what that is unless they really know what that is. Like nobody's just running. If they
yeah,
run up on you and they're like, "Oh my God, T30," you're gonna have a nice conversation. Go have a coffee. Go have some pasta or something, and you're gonna have a great time. It's
yeah,
one of those type of watches
yeah,
for sure. It's
totally.
there's a simple beauty about it, and our shared love of hidden tourbillons as well. So like you're looking at the dial all day, work because you're tired, you're stressed out. You know what? I want to pop my Hunter case back open and just see that big old
Yeah,
tourbillon. You just can get lost in the simplicity of that watch, and I do think it's a special piece. So I think it's worthy of the prices. It's interesting to see them
yeah,
hammered for sure.
yeah. And any brands who are listening, please do more Hunter caseback tourbillons that are not visible from the dial side. Mirror polish the inside of the Hunter caseback so you can use it as a mirror to
Yep.
watch the tourbillon. But please just do that. Less skews, more Hunter caseback tourbillons.
It'll
There, we're gonna put that on a T-shirt too.
Yeah, I mean, they should really hire us. We Cheryl Gottlieb consultant. We can make it work because a hidden tourbillon goes a long way, and I think tourbillons are honestly played out. So like when you make it
Yeah,
special, I think people really appreciate it. Like a Portland Marie, I was looking at the other day.
yeah,
You could get those for such great values right now. I don't know, normal tourbillon. The romance is almost gone. I feel sometimes.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely, man. Um, well, the romance is certainly not gone for Voutilainen.
No.
We were just talking about him and Urban Jurgensen. 235 roughly for a Vent Wheat. Kind of a standard watch for him. I think that's a great result
Uh, uh,
for Kari.
Amazing result. It
And
was a Goodwill edition. I don't know if it was piece unique, but it
yeah,
was a beautiful, beautiful dial nonetheless. But not the most exotic piece in the world or anything like that. Not a Vink 8 ISO or something like that. So really strong result. And like I said, I know a lot of people who are lining up for Kari. A lot of people. The appreciation was always there, but I think the Urban Jurgensen attachment and like you see this watch and you know what you could get a Kari piece and you can still get a Kari piece versus what the UJs are charging. It's a hard
yeah,
decision to be honest with you.
yeah, totally. And I think it comes down to whether you love the legacy of Derek Pratt and Kari Voutilainen and their shared history together. And then the Urban Jurgensen has gone through so many reboots over the years. And Jean-Francois Mohan was involved in it for a while. So like you've just got great watchmakers involved in it. But I think it's whether you want something with Kari's name on the dial or something with the Urban Jurgensen, 250 plus years of history on the dial. And for me, like I'm a Kari fanatic. I love his teardrop lugs. I think they are a thing of beauty. So I think I fall into camp Kari. But a 7-year wait list right now is a hard thing to stomach
Oh,
because,
for
like we
sure.
talked about, tastes change.
But
And are you gonna still be into what you design now in 7 years?
it's easy to wait 7 years if I tell you it's gonna be worth whatever you're paying for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Whatever you pay for it
yeah,
is going to be worth it, and it's not at the levels of like a Roger Smith where like you're seeing those dip. If you're on a waiting list for Kari piece at retail, you're gonna do good. And he's God bless him, he's living, he's breathing, the energy's
yeah,
there. So when there's something about a living watchmaker that is much easier to invest in, versus like usually I love them, but again it's 250 years of history. back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So you got to build up that love. You got to build up that connection where with Kari, you get to see him. Hey, wow, he's doing his brand and he made a UJ on top of everything.
Yeah.
So it makes you, again, even more excited to invest in his work because you see like, man, on his spare time, he just, just raising a brand from the dead again. So it's very, very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Frocham, they're next on my list here. They had a split second minute repeater pocket watch.
So sick.
Lot 24, 241,000. Just like amazing. And then the next lot was their double impulse chronometer, which I've drone on and on about. I'm sure listeners are sick of hearing me talk about it, but such a sick watch. This is the tribute to George Daniels piece unique in yellow gold, all in for 330,000. Great result for them. I think that's like double current retail right now. But just like such cool watches. I love the watchmaking. I don't know what it is. Like, I do know what it is. Like, I'm in my old man era of watches. I love three-handers right now. I love simplicity. It's a like simply elegant watch. And that watch in yellow gold, like something about yellow gold has me right now too, where like
it's
you
coming
just
back.
throw any number of straps at it, man. And like, are we like going back to the 80s here? Are we just like, for lack of a better word, greed is good? Like
people
is
aren't
that
afraid.
all we're doing now?
Yeah, we're back in the yellow gold phase, so where gold prices are up. People aren't afraid to show off the gold a little bit, depending on the area. If you're in Miami, you never stopped wearing gold, and I think that's coming back in the watch world in a big way. And these are special watches, important watches. The pocket watch made for J.P. Morgan, which I thought was super interesting, and you just forget like all these big names, these big business magnates. A lot of them were also like horologists, man. Like they didn't just want a pocket watch. They didn't just want something with diamonds or jewels. They were like, hey, can you make me a split second a split chronograph, blah, 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 like some crazy watches. So it was really nice to see them getting in their appreciation. And then on the tribute to George Daniels as well, which is a beautiful piece. I think they're at another brand that their waitlist, I think, is well over 10 years. I think they found their place, and I think they're on a good path. Real independence, and I remember seeing them in Dubai watching maybe 2021 or something like that. And I was just like, wow, very interesting pieces. Never heard of them before, and now look at what they're doing in the auction. So real independence, truly rare watches are having their day, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man. The next lot I've got, just because it's a couple lots after, is the Biver, the Caroline Tourbillon.
Yes.
Piece number one. Compared to the prototype piece that sold at Phillips 2 years ago, I want to say, which I think hammered for north of $1 million.
Yeah.
And they kept throwing in additional extras like Jean-Claude Biver was going to have dinner with you. He was going to bring his special vintage selections of Chateau Yquem. He was going to bring cheese from his farm, like all this stuff, right? Like, he was like, it kept doubling from like, oh, I'll bring a bottle of Chateau Yquem to 2 bottles to, like magnums to like, it just kept getting kind of stupid. And now, this one, 445, K all in. I obviously not as strong as the first one. Like, I don't know about this piece in particular. I do like what they're doing. I've had a bunch of their watches on the wrist. Like their time only piece is lovely. It's great. But in the same vein of brands we're talking about here, if you're talking Urban Jurgensen, if you're talking Kari, if you're talking Charles Frocham, it's I think it's a question of what resonates with you. And do you really get on with and love Jean-Claude Biver and all the things he's done in the watch industry? Do you get along with Pierre? Do you want to hang out with those guys? Cool. Then buy the watch. Or like, do you go to somebody that has like a different history and heritage? Like, Jean-Claude Biver has been all over the watch industry. He inked the deal for James Bond with Omega. Yep. He's got a different heritage in the watch industry, and not as a watchmaker. but do you go with the watchmaker or do you go with the brand builders? And it's a question that I think is broadly applicable across the industry right now.
You know, I think it's super broadly applicable. But you could put it all over the industry. And it's so funny because yesterday I was having a conversation with a client who's a collector, not a client, actually, just a friend collector. And he's a little bit newer in independence, but in the past, like 6 months or so, maybe 9 months, he's touched and seen and visited, went to Watches and Wonders, seen everything. And yesterday he was like, I just first saw the Bifair Automatique and I'm just in love with the finishing. I just like this thing is just, I feel like it's levels above everything else. And what I love about that is the Biver watch situation. They're the one brand who's telling it like it is. They're not making anything. They're using the best
Yeah.
partners. And what I like about that is Mr. Biver is, I'm scheduled to go along with some friends and meet with him, and I might faint, to be honest with you. In Dubai 2019, he was there signing books, and I couldn't go sign the book. That's how nervous I
Yeah.
was. That's how impactful I feel he is to even my life. Just with all the things he's
Yeah.
done across the industry, I could tell you, well, if he didn't do this and this and this, and this didn't happen when Hublot, there's no CQ the Watch guy. You know what I mean? It's so funny. And
Well, there's like no watch industry
exactly
without him, like it's crazy to think about, but like he's one of those guys who really actually like kicked the watch industry in the ass and got it. Like product placement in James Bond, like
yeah,
they stole that deal, but it gives mechanical watches a reason to exist.
yeah.
And without that reason to exist, you know, in 1998, do we forget about? Have we forgotten about watches by 2025? I don't know. Does it
Probably,
remain a like weird niche hobby
probably.
that like very few people are into?
It be
So yeah, I
it becomes
yeah,
something that
you can't.
like artisans in like Asia and so of course Switzerland and other people like, and it's like that. It's like a very, it's like knife making almost, where you got to search and find for it.
Yeah,
But I think that's exactly what
totally.
happens.
Yeah,
But
absolutely, man.
just to say, um, I think his watches are really, really good. I think the initial support, of course, were the friends of Jean-Claude Biver. And even with this watch, you threw in here, you can meet him and things like that. And I think that is very important because you're not just buying into the brand, you're buying into the legacy here. You're buying into support
Yeah,
a father making something for a son who wants to create something that will last forever, but also the father who is a grandpapa to a lot of guys out here. A lot of
yeah,
people come from the Biver tree. If your football person is the same as like the Madden tree or the Belichick tree or something like that, you could really do the history and see where all the winners come from. And they studied under this crazy guy for a little bit. So I think his time only watches are good. But I think, again, we're going to go back into when you're talking these levels of prices, I think a lot of the guys are a little tired right now. And they're tired of
yeah,
buying things, not being able to get the value out of it. A lot of people are not in just collecting for collecting mode, they're collecting for wear. And it's a tourbillon carry-on minute repeater, beautiful, but it's not for everybody. Again, tourbillons played
yeah,
out. Certain people like mini repeaters from certain places. So I don't expect these to keep hammering for super excellent things until they attach a very important watchmaker to it. Then maybe people will pay
yeah,
like, oh, it's a Vuittolen and a Luca Soprano, this or that. But while it's just Biver, I think people will appreciate the automatic stuff and things in reasonable price ranges. I think they will always find good support. But these pieces, I don't expect to keep in high altitudes.
yeah. 100%, man. And I couldn't agree more. Like I think the brand is doing really cool things as a brand. Like I think Jean-Claude Biver and Pierre, I think Pierre in particular has a really cool vision of where the brand is going to go and how they're going to create sort of a family situation amongst their collectors and how they're going to do events with their collectors. And I sat down with him and I heard the vision and I really appreciate it and I like where they're going, because I think too many brands, just and like we've talked about big brands, we're beating a dead horse here, but like they show up, they do a dinner, they do a cocktail hour, and then they're gone. But something like Biver, they want to bring their collectors back time and time again and do like incredible experiences with them, which builds that brand loyalty, builds those friendships, and then sort of creates that community organically for them. And so I really appreciate what they're doing.
Well, I think John Claude Biver is the original, not maybe not the original, but one of the icons when you talk about building a community around a brand. I'll never forget seeing on forums people talk about Hublot, and he just comment under the post, say, "Hey, reach out to this email. I want to extend your inventory, your warranty." And I forget, you just like
Yeah.
say something nice about Hublot. Oh, I just picked up this. So he was there. He was on the forums, or at least somebody was. And they know how to build a community. And one thing I found in the past 5 years, 6 years now, brands have really forgotten that. They leaned into watches being very easy to sell, and they become just the oil. You're pumping oil drill. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're like they
Totally.
find these clients who have deep pockets. They wine and dine them a little bit, not as much as they used to before. They wine and dine you just a little bit, then they hook you up and they're like, let's start pumping. Let's start pumping. Can you give me 100 grand? Can you give me 200 grand? And then when the pump is dry, they just toss you to the side and they find somebody else. And they forget
Yeah.
what the liquidity that they had in the beginning to make them who they are today. Somebody like John Claude Biver,
Yeah.
and of course he's probably beaten this into Pierre since he was like a baby in Pampers, is the customer is everything. The client is
Yeah.
everything. If we're talking luxury, we're talking experience. You cannot ask
Yeah.
luxury pricing without giving the luxury experience. And right now in 2025, it's upside down for many brands. I'm not going to say a bunch of brands here, but many brands should really look at themselves and like, you know, are are is your client having a better experience at a very nice coffee shop, at a very nice bakery than buying a watch from yourself? I'm not even going to say
Yeah.
a tailor. I'm not even going to say a leathersmith or another luxury. I think for brands who are asking you 50, 60, 70, even $100,000, there's a coffee shop right next door that makes you feel much better than you do spending $100,000 with that brand. And we got to fix that.
Yeah.
And Biver, they know that, and they're doing it the right way. And even just, I'm just going along with some friends on this trip, just seeing how the communication is. It's just like Pierre and his brother. There's not a big team. It's not a bunch of marketing people. It's just very, very
Yeah.
intimate contact. And that's how you build a brand if you want to ask these type of prices. I think the vision is very, very sound because they're doing it the right way. They're doing the right steps to make it happen.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. All right, little sidetrack into what brands can learn from us
Right.
there.
We're giving them tips.
But what else you got in Phillips, man?
Well, in Phillips, I have to talk about Lot 11, Along and Sono, 1815 Chronograph, 2022 Best in Show, Concorso de Eleganza. This thing, if I had $1 billion, this would have went for a million. I was going home. I would have went home with this watch. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I wish it had a open case back, but it's a one of one 1815 in just salmon and this dark rose, just a color combination I've never seen before. And you put it on a long zone and being a one of one. And they said the winner of the 2022 Best in Show was a $50 million car. So this is a discount in comparison, but a beautiful watch and a nice, just it's good to know that like important, beautiful watches are still appreciated out there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, that's a stunning watch. It's absolutely beautiful. Um, I I love the interplay between the sub dials and the strap, the salmon dial. It's just it's perfect. I understand why it went for so much, or why it went so high. But I think you're right. I think it probably could have hit $1 million.
Oh yeah.
Maybe this fall.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe we see one and it hits a million.
Yeah, if this pops up again, it goes very strong, no matter what. It's just you
Yeah,
don't get special long and songs like this, and it's interesting because you see the lumen pieces kind of softening up, and then this comes out and really just hits it out the park.
yeah, absolutely. I think there's something special about white metal salmon dial that like just
It just works.
everybody goes crazy for. It just works. Like it just looks special and wonderful. So I have no complaints about that one. Harry Winston, Opus One, Lot 84, FP Journe,
Wow.
fully diamond set, Opus One. 838K all in. I I think there's just a I don't think all the Opus pieces, I think everybody knows the Opus project, but I don't think all the Opus pieces are appreciated. But I think Opus One is definitely one of those pieces, and I think it's going to again. I think this goes to Jorn collectors. I think this is a Jorn collector who wants Jorn references, and they probably have stuff from his time at THA with Breguet or with Cartier. I'm sure they own other pieces outside of just FP Jorn, but everything that has his DNA or his signature on it.
That there's a reason why he sent the letter out when he bought the brigade clock, because he knew that there are
Yeah,
people like you said. If there's just FP's on DNA on it, you're gonna buy it. And these Opus One pieces, when you get into these piece uniques, and there are a few different piece uniques out there. Again, for that black label collector, this is it, right? This is the a black
yeah,
label. It's a black label resonance with baguettes, right? It just has Harry
yeah,
Winston on it. So yeah, and I
yeah,
remember when these were like doing okay, but they weren't doing crazy. And I'll never forget um, Brian Goldberg. I think we had like a purple one in, and this was many years ago when I was 1916. But not so many great watches come through, but I rarely see somebody like a Brian Goldberg or George Mayer really fawn over. And both people I've seen
yeah,
fawn over special Jorns, but there was a purple Harry Winston, man. And I remember he was just such in a trance looking at it. And I was like, I went to, I was like, Brian, just keep it, bro. You want this one. And
yeah,
like he stepped out of himself from the business person, and it was just like Brian, the enthusiast, for a second, and he was just nodding his head. He's like, "I love it. No, we gotta sell it." I'm like, Brian, I've never ever seen you like I could just see like in his eyes the love and joy, and I'm like, brother, I've known you for a while now, and I've never seen you look that way at anything, and I've seen you kind of try some watches on, and I'm like, keep it. And like now that's probably like, an 800 grand watch, 600 grand watch. Back then it's
yeah,
probably under 200, under 150 back then. So it's just interesting. But
yeah,
again, there are a lot of people like Brian out there who just appreciate the watch for what it is. Then you put in the investor collectors and lightning in a bottle every time right now. Every time.
yeah. Absolutely, man. You got anything else from Phillips you want to cover?
No. My 3970E went for 419, so that's a watch I gotta save up for, which is that champagne dial 3970 that I love. But beyond that, it was just a strong
Yeah,
auction, man. And I watched all these
yeah,
auctions live, and I watched Phillips like a TV show. They were just so
yeah,
entertaining. The auctioneers are great. They do a great job of the production quality. The cameras panning around the room, so you feel like you know everybody. You see everybody on the phone, and like if I was somebody who was bidding, they would have got me many times for sure. So I just think
yeah.
if you're somebody who's selling a special watch in an auction, Phillips has to be the place you check first. They just do
To go.
an outstanding job.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I don't disagree with that. And I'll just my pick from Phillips when we did this with our Hong Kong wrap up was the 5951P Lot 35,
Mm.
330K, which is below retail. And if I had a spare 331K laying around, that watch would be in the safe right now because that watch is I it just has my number, man. It's
It's
just
gorgeous. It's gorgeous, and so we're just in a time, and I tell clients right now, you can really pick up important watches like these for reasonable values. It's a high dollar watch, but you know,
yeah,
odds are the pendulum is going to swing back, and important watches like these are what people are going to really be paying the big bucks for. And I
yeah,
just think, this. If you're right. If you had the spare cash, I'd have been like, Todd, get it just so I could try it on because
yeah,
this is fun. It's
yeah,
sporty.
totally.
It's a it's a grand complication, but like you could wear it on a good night out and still have fun with it.
Yeah,
I think
it feels like a watch you wear while you're driving your Ferrari.
exactly.
Like when you're driving either your black or your red Ferrari, or maybe you're like, your red GT3 RS, like this is what you pull out of the safe and put on: black strap, red contrast stitching, and you just like, it's just the vibe for the day.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, that's all I need to say.
So
That's all I'm
good.
going to
So
say
good.
about it. Otherwise, I'll start, waxing poetic. Christie's. I got two from Christie's. I had called out Lot 21, the Grubel Forsey GMT, as my pick of the auction.
Yes.
252K, like we talked about, like that feels pretty strong for that watch, especially like a little bit of an older variant of it, when they were still trying to figure out where they were going to go with the GMT. And then Lot 43, the double tourbillon and platinum for 391K all in, let's call it. Like,
That was
it's a
strong.
hockey puck,
Exactly.
but I have worn that watch around the 1916 offices. I wore it around for an entire afternoon, and like George had to chase me down to get me to take that thing off. It is just like, it's a hockey puck, but it's the most incredible hockey puck I've ever worn. Like I was smitten with it.
Yeah, it is a hockey puck, but I always say Grubel uses that real estate the best, that they're using.
Yeah,
And I do think that there is a bubbling of appreciation for the brand. I think there is something with the Zuckerberg effect. I think, high-end collectors saw him wearing that handmade one. And there are other big collectors who always support a Grubel. So I think if you're somebody who's spending that level of dollar, you might have maybe done a little bit of research. And if you start to do the research into Grubel, it makes you wonder why you've been paying 300,000 for a Paddock Nautilus. You know what I mean? It really
yeah,
makes you question a lot of things. I think a little bit of that is happening where collectors are up there. You have certain dealers who still are buying and supporting the brand. So I was surprised to see it, well past its high estimate of 220. And when I was watching this, I was like, oh wow, I was very impressed there. But I do think the appreciation is there for the brand, and people are understanding now. I think a big part of when you get to that price level is like the understanding has to be there. And it takes a while to understand why I'm paying
yeah,
this, and why this tourbillon, and why this angle is important, and why is hand finishing worth anything. But once you realize
yeah,
what it's worth, Grubel becomes an easy answer to a lot of the questions, if you're going to spend that money anyways, for sure.
yeah. Absolutely, man. Uh, did you have a Longa in this auction, or am I misremembering that?
I think the Longo was from the other
Phillips
from the Phillips.
was Phillips. Yeah. What did you have in this auction?
So in this auction, I forgot, but there did the Bulgari happen in this auction? There was an insane Bulgari Serpenti with a
Maybe it was. I'm
maybe
cruising right now.
no, I don't think it's that auction. It's in this one. Maybe it's
Oh yeah, it is. It's lot 51.
this Bulgari Serpenti with a Vacheron Constantin clocking them out. 277,200 all in. There was another older Bulgari Tubeless piece that also went for strong numbers. I believe that was in Phillips. So there's a big resurgence happening in important jewelry timepieces, and I just didn't see that coming. So I gotta do some research. But to see this go for almost 300,000, and it's a piece from 1970, it was really really
Yeah.
interesting. I think there's a real appreciation for jewelry timepieces or bejeweled, or
Yeah.
just a mixture that's doing great right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if that's in part due to like the rise in female collectors who are really interested in watches, but really interested also in finding more feminine watches that have mechanical movements in them. Because so many of the watches aimed at female collectors are quartz movements to make them smaller. And I am loving that, my wife is super into
Yep.
watches, that more women are into this, and women are wearing everything from, like Daytonas and Panerais all the way down to like the Rolex Lady Datejust. It's a wide gamut, but things like that Serpenti, like those are just cool. They're just super cool objects that you're not seeing a lot of right now.
Exactly. And I think in the same way, I'm a big Reddit guy, right? So I go into like the Hermes Birkin Reddits and the Louis Vuitton Reddits and like some of those high end fashion Reddits, I just got to gauge to see what people are thinking about, what they're talking about, just so I could, just get to dip into that world. One thing about female collectors, once they're in, they're in. They're educated,
Yeah,
they know what they're talking about, they don't mess around, and they know value. They know how to
yeah,
keep the money good. So I could see
yeah,
a world where enough of these pieces started to be traded, where somebody's like, hey, make sure you go for 70s pieces. They didn't make a lot. Same thing with Cartier. Well, if there's somebody who's doing a good enough job curating and educating the clientele, they'll buy and they'll support his improvements. I imagine that that's what this is like a good pocket of female collectors who are buying up important historical pieces. They see what's going on. They understand the true value that's there. One thing, I have a lot of friends who do watches, they're in secondary watch market, but they also sell Birkin bags. And I always ask those guys,
yeah,
how's the Birkin market? Never ever have they said it's bad. Even when the watches started
yeah,
to drop, they're like, okay, it's soft a little bit, but we're still selling them. I can't. And I'm like, wow. So
yeah,
that's, so it tells you something about those markets that we're not privy to. So I can imagine something similar
yeah,
might be going on that I'd love if
totally.
somebody's listening and could give us insight, let us know. 'Cause I'm very interested.
Yeah, absolutely. Or any female collectors, like come hang out with us. Like
Yeah.
let's chat. I would love to hear what's going on, what you're looking at, like what the world has looked like for you. Because my education began at a young age, but then it was also just playing around and trying stuff and seeing what I liked, and then eventually like finding a way to go deeper rather than starting with research, getting really deep on the research, and that's what I would advocate for people now. Like you got to go try watches on in the metal, but there's so many great resources out there. There's so many great forums, so many great writers to follow and learn about watches from. Go do that, curate a list of what you think you're interested in, and then go try everything on. Meet with fellow collectors and just go try everything. But yeah, would love to get a bunch of people on here and just talk about their experiences and their education in the watch world.
Yeah, that's awesome. But just quickly on your point, there's really no reason in 2025 to be an uneducated buyer. So much resources
Yeah,
out there, podcasts like this, countless blogs, Substacks. That you fall into watch content and education everywhere, so it's really easy to at least be somewhat educated in what you're checking out, which is a good idea.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. You got anything else at Christie's?
Uh Nothing else at Christie's that stood out. Some of the indies were a little bit soft, the Mosers, the Dibitunes, but nothing that really surprised me. Decent auction, but again, when you look at the curation, I guess the 3974R actually, which is the rose
Yeah,
gold mini repeated perpetual calendar, that's the star of the show. But when we talk about curation, you look at everything else, a lot of these are gettable. The Richard Milles actually would be something I like to talk about. Very, very soft.
yeah,
Struggled to get to the low end of their
yeah,
estimates. Struggled to
yeah,
get to the low end of their estimates. Lot 75, I believe, only got one bid. And I think the other ladies piece, lot 91, only got a couple of bids. And that's it. So real soft in there in the RM market, but that paddock was amazing.
yeah.
So I wasn't surprised to see that go for almost 1.2 million all in.
Yeah. And I'm looking at the RM10, which was lot 93, for 101K for all intents and purposes, all in. I'm not sure if that has to do with the fact that RM re released the RM10 and did a version 2. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just not desirable in that it's just a straightforward three hander with a date. Um, I don't know.
Well, so the problem is, and I always say, RM is one of those brands where people talk to me about the colors versus the complications. So now this is just a black and titanium watch. We have to forget about
Yeah.
anything else. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how it's been. Not that's how it's sold, but that's how it's sold when it gets to the secondary market. And the secondary market is the market, right? So
Yeah.
this just becomes a bland RM. There's nothing special about this if you're looking for something with high complications or colors. This is just a time only piece. So I think right now
Yeah.
they're struggling to find people who would buy something like this. I think the overall market for them is soft, but even something like this, they're and this used to be a 60-ish grand watch, before everything started
Yeah.
to go crazy. So I think a lot of people memories aren't that short. A lot of people remember when you could walk in and buy a watch. So a lot of those guys are
Yeah.
there just, you know, you got to give them something special.
Absolutely, man. Well, with respect to time here, looking at Sotheby's, um, I will say off the bat, one thing that annoys me about Sotheby's is you actually have to log in to see the results.
I hate it so
And
much.
that's frustrating to me. And like, auction houses, if you're listening, please just make it simple for us to find your results. Please also just give us a PDF or a CSV or an Excel file with the hammer price and the all in price. And that would just make my life and everybody else's life so simple. So if you could please do that for us,
And people
we'd love it.
look at these things. Collectors like they
Yeah.
they like Phillips because Christie's as well. Easy to watch, the easy to watch, easy to operate. Sotheby's
Yeah.
didn't have the best camera angles. The layout wasn't the best. And then to see the bloody prices, you got a lot. I have 5 different Sotheby's passwords in the past week or the past 2 weeks because
Yeah.
I recorded it. I had to log in to do that. Then I forgot the password because I had to, and then like throughout my career, I'm always using auction sites to get history. And it's all
Yeah.
everybody else. Okay, I have the login, but I don't need it. These guys is always a thing. And then you got the captcha and they got one of those weird, frustrating
Yeah.
experience. So if I'm having that, imagine your older client who just wants to buy. You know what I mean? You got to think
Yeah.
about those people as
Totally.
well. Who just you want to make it nice and seamless. And when you look at other
Yeah.
auction houses, it's just a little bit easier. So please help us out. Help us help
Yeah.
you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? To be
Help
honest
us
with
help
you.
you. Yeah. This is free. We're giving
Yeah.
you free advice now
And,
on how to retain clients.
exactly. And people love seeing the auctions. People love getting to the results, and it helps create the education. But if I got to log in every 5 seconds, I'm not doing that. I do it just for Todd,
Yeah,
just for my
totally,
love
man.
of Todd. I'm
I
doing it.
I almost couldn't be bothered to log in to get the auction results. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was on about lot 72, the Frank Mueller tourbillon blue dial platinum case, platinum bracelet. Um, $30,000. I'd say that's a steal.
Yes.
I think that's probably what the platinum in that watch is worth.
Yeah.
Like
Insane.
it's crazy. That was a steal. They had a Journe Resonance, which was lot 108, 254K. And that felt light
Yeah.
for that watch to me. And then the big one for me was the George Daniels Anniversary number 24 in yellow gold, which was lot 112.
Also light.
Yeah, cool 571,000, but feels like that was light for Daniels.
Yeah, I feel like Daniel's pieces have been doing really, really well. And just this whole auction, to be honest, was a little bit soft. Again, I watched a little bit of this one live too, and the energy wasn't there. To my opinion, nothing went too crazy when I looked over the results. I saw the resonance, and it's not like a super special one, but still, felt a little bit soft. The Rose Optimum as well. It felt normal. The RMs low. And then I watched that George Daniels live, and I feel like if it's in Phillips, it gets 750 or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something I'm
Yeah.
missing.
Yeah. I don't know. But also speaking of Blancpains, there's like 4 or 5 Blancpain versions of the 50 Fathoms in this auction
Yes.
too. So if you were looking for a vintage 50 Fathoms, this might have been the place to look. But yeah, again, like we talked about curation, like the curation of this just feels soft compared to Phillips, compared to Monaco Legend, and compared to Christie's. It just, like it's varied. There didn't seem to be a lot of cohesive structure
No.
to this auction. And you know, I understand that it's hard sourcing pieces and that it's hard to put an auction together, but it just sort of feels to me like, man, maybe there could have been some better structure to this. And then I would agree with you. Like I was looking at the RMs in this one. The RM 29 Le Mans felt kind of soft, and then the Bubba Watson kind of felt right for where the market is, but it's a all black version of the Bubba Watson. You
Yeah,
know,
Asia
like
exclusive, supposed to be special, but again, people like the white Bubba. But I would say like
yeah,
4 or 5 years ago, this probably goes for 500 grand. You know what I mean? It goes
yeah,
insane.
yeah, totally. Again, I think RM is one of those brands that falls into the too many SKUs
Oh
category,
yeah, too many
and
SKUs,
then
prices are
too many
too
SKUs
high, too many games to get the
and too
watch.
annoying. Yeah, too annoying of a game
To
to
change a
get
strap,
where you want to
I
be.
need to go to a dealer. There's not a dealer everywhere. I know a very good friend of mine has to fly to Boston. He doesn't mind, but it's still like so
Yeah,
it's like it's the one brand where like you have to time your seasons of strap change, and then just to change the strap that I already own, I'm spending money on a flight. Okay, maybe it's someplace I like to go, but what if I'm international? What if I live in the Virgin
yeah,
Islands? I got to fly to Miami, so I got to pay $500 just to change the strap. I don't know. There's certain things I just like. You could treat me one way if I'm not spending hundreds of thousands, I guess. You know what I mean? I come from such a
yeah,
different realm in
yeah,
terms of experience, and like, if my to me if my starting SKU is 135, I fly somebody to you to change a strap. If that's the situation,
yeah. Totally,
if the situation is like,
totally.
hey, to change straps, it's something where only certain people should do it, and we want it water tested. I have a great team that fly to you, and they make not as soon as you want it. You got to pay a little extra for that. But
Yeah,
hey, Mr. Cyril, our team will be in this region. We'll be in the East Coast during this week's.
yeah,
We know that you live near here. Would you like something changed? That's how you do it. But for me to pay you
yeah,
200 grand and then I got to fly to you, I don't know. I hear things like this and I
yeah,
just feel like I'm in bizarro land. But it's you know that's what it is today.
yeah. And also, I'm sorry I got hung up on this, but if you are in and out of Miami for $500, tell me your secrets because that place is crazy,
Yeah.
and I don't know how you get in and out of there for
That's a
only
very low.
$500.
That's what I'm saying. You're planning out the whole season. So you're planning like 6 months ahead. I'm gonna fly to Miami. I'm
Yeah,
gonna switch this job. So then I hopefully can get at 300. You're wrong. Yeah, I'm wrong because I was just looking up some flights. I was like, no, it's not. Even on the
there's no
Spirit
way.
flights, it's still.
There's no way. It's
It's
not
still, so
happening.
imagine that, like some the people in the Caribbean, there are a bunch of RM guys in the Caribbean, like they gotta, you know what I mean? You're spending like $1,000, you know what I mean? If you're doing first class, you're spending two
Yeah,
grand just to change your strap. And then it's not the easiest to get watches. You're only offering me certain things. Again, it's still the oil pump situation. I'm sure there's a lot of great RM
yeah,
people as well. And it is what it is. But yeah, that's why, listen,
yeah,
nobody's going to chase you in the auctions if that's what's going on. Where in 2025, people understand the value of their dollars and they understand that these brands need them. So I think a lot of
yeah,
brands, need to step up. I'm not calling it RM because they do a good job with sending clients out and the client experience is good. They just don't make that much watches and
yeah.
whatever. But I think, clients understand their value and they're going to pay for it secondary and primary market. The rubber's meeting the road this year. That's for sure.
Absolutely, man. Anything else at Sotheby's?
No, the curation wasn't like I just looked through the auction again, and like you said, I would say beyond 30 lots, everything else, 30 out of like over like 120, everything else you could
Yeah,
get pretty much on the secondary market. Right now in Chrono
yeah,
24 is what I mean. Not even like hunting too hard. Like of course the
yeah,
special the Millship Boulevard, those vintage bonbons, but a lot of Rolexes that are cool, that are nice, but any good vintage dealer has most of these SKUs. A lot of modern stuff here. There's a special Aquanaut with some baguettes. There's a 5711 P with baguettes, but nothing here that I would stay up for. So I live streamed
yeah,
every auction except this auction because there's nothing that I
yeah,
thought people would whereas the Phillips auction, like, oh my gosh, there's like five things. I was like, oh my gosh. Here is just like, let's see what happens. Yeah, so
Yeah.
they got to work on that.
Yeah, for sure, man. Any big takeaways from this auction session?
Um, Being that it was in the U.S. market, it shows that the tariffs are really having an effect on auction houses, and which is obvious. So it shows that the U.S. consumer is willing to buy. I know a lot of U.S. consumers who did bid and won auctions in these auctions last couple of weeks ago. So the U.S. market is still buying special pieces, but they're also a very savvy market. And I think as a whole,
Yeah,
people are supporting important watches. They're not chasing down things that they can easily get on the secondary market. But if you're rare, if you're special, they'll support you. Independents are still being led by Jorn. There's still some strength depending the watch, because it's interesting. We're seeing softening in Moser, Dibitune, Laurent Ferrier, but we're seeing strengthening in Gruber Forsey. So there's definitely some
yeah,
forces out there. People are getting educated in the market, and they're paying up for good watchmaking and premium watchmaking, and they're watching. Again, we go back to too many SKUs, too many colorways. A lot of those brands, I think, are just kind of they're reaping what they sow in that situation. But overall, market seems healthy. The sky isn't falling. I'm not in Chicken Little situation right now. People are buying watches.
yeah,
It's just where the watches are it determines a lot.
yeah. Totally, and I think location determines a lot, and then I think like the market has probably hit a low here. Like we've hit a low for a lot of things, and I think that it doesn't mean retail pricing for a lot, but it does mean that like maybe we're starting to see the floor for some of these pieces, and kind of get a more stable market here, and so. I'm happy about that, but we're entering the slow season. We're entering the long slow summer. Switzerland's out of office for most of July,
Yep.
and they're not going to reply to you. And we'll see people around Geneva Watch Days, but no major auctions, no major releases slotted until Geneva Watch Days. And even then, I think Geneva Watch Days may be more restrained this year. I think the brands that had the opportunities to pivot and push stuff out for Watches and Wonders probably did so. And so you might see some light changes, but mostly just I think Geneva Watch Days will serve as a collector gathering with a few releases, but mostly a big collector party. And I think people might be saving up for Dubai Watch Week this year too.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of action about Dubai Watch Week is going to be the biggest that they've ever done. So I think there's going to be a little bit explosive. And I think, there was another export report that came out today. The exports are down. The, we were in a weird situation, especially in the U.S. market, because all these brands just increased their retail pricing, and before the tariff situation, they increased it again with the tariff situation. Secondary market is leading the way in terms of value, but there's not enough 1916s of the world who are going to buy a big variety of watches. There's not enough European watches of the world who are going to buy enough variety of watches to really support the market, how these brands need to support with the hefty retail prices. And I think discounting is going to come back big, or if brands are smart, they take away from the marketing budgets, put it in CPO. Because in
Yeah,
2025, as you go into the slow season, hard for consumers to buy a Blancpain 38 millimeter close to 20,000. It's just a low hanging fruit. But like if we had an hour or more,
yeah,
I would go to every brand and I could show you a product there that you just don't understand the pricing of it. And I think a lot of brands really need to consider that, because as you go into the slow season, you could get everything you want secondary market at a good value right now. You could get paddock pieces 40% off because the prices just kept going up so much. Not because the watches are all of a sudden a bad value, but the rate of speed of the retail prices, the perpetual calendars have exploded. So now you're seeing perpetual
yeah,
calendars for 60, 70,000. Last year, the retail was 89 or 90,000. Now it's 110 or something. So it's just like the rate of the price versus secondary market makes it hard for the primary market pieces. And a lot of these group brands, I think Swatch Group should have really took him on the board. Let's just say that. I worry for them.
yeah, for sure. Well, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. It starts and ends with
Yeah,
Blancpain and with activist investing. So, on that note, CQ, thank you, man. This was
it was
great.
awesome. A pleasure as
Um,
always.
we, we don't have any auctions to talk about, but we got a lot to talk about in the watch industry going forward.
Sure.
And I really appreciate you doing this, man.
Of course.
Thanks for jumping in, and thanks for, as always, for being yourself and for being prepared.
I try, man. No, it was a pleasure. Always good doing this. And where else are we going to cover all these topics? So look forward to hopping on again with you.
Exactly, man. Let's start a search fund and do some activist investing of our own here.
Hey, I'm gonna send you that. I'm gonna send you his stuff, and you're gonna read it and be like, "Oh wow, this is actually." I'm gonna send it to you because next time we talk, we should talk about it. It's interesting.
3 seats on the swatch board, maybe.
Come on. I think we could make Brigade. I think Brigade. That alone, I have confidence we can make Brigade what it should be. Hire us. We can make it happen.
Absolutely. All right, buddy. Thanks so much.
All right, see you later.
I appreciate it. Bye.
I want to thank CQ for coming on the podcast again today. Thanks so much for tuning in and listening to Forward Momentum. I hope you enjoyed the wrap-up of the New York City auctions, Monaco Legend, and a wrap-up of what's going on in the watch industry currently. We'll be back with more updates on Forward Momentum soon, but we'll probably take a little summer break here. As most of Switzerland is on vacation and the watch industry takes a break, we'll do the same. And we'll be back soon. Take care, and thanks for listening to Forward Momentum.